Good afternoon. It's the Oak Bloke here, and we're going to cover Unite. But before I start on that, I'm also going to just talk through where just going to talk about the markets a little bit. So, particularly want to just call out and talk about the Oak Bloke picks for 26. So I've made a couple of changes. So I just wanted to talk through these with you. So I covered. First thing to say is that subsequent to my prior update was just over a week ago. I think it was the 27th of Feb, just before the US-Iran war kicked off. The portfolio was running at plus 38.7. It's now running at plus 30.3. So has taken a hit. So you can sort of see there, what's that, about a quarter of the gains wiped off. So I just wanted to talk through some that had gained, some that had reduced, and then I'll talk about Unite. Unite is this one here, so we'll talk about that one last, if that's okay. So a couple of quick things to say. So eco buildings, I covered that in my presentation last Monday on Vox Markets, and I think when you look at all the partnerships and you look at the value of the technology, you look at the direction of travel of it, is 13.8p a tempting price? Well, yeah, absolutely, because it's not a lot above the value of the partnerships and sort of ascribes no value to the technology itself. But we'll see. I mean, I'd say this one is a high risk, but could increase by hundreds and hundreds of percent potentially, on the basis of the news flow. So we'll see on that one. Particularly wanted to point out this one, Integrated Diagnostic Holdings. It's dropped by, so it's now at 60 cents, which in GBP terms is 45.1 pence. Incredibly cheap for and I mean, yes, so its operations are in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt, in Jordan, and in Nigeria. Could its operations be affected by the current war? Is it a victim of the current war, current conflict? Well, yes. I mean, there are attacks being made on Saudi Arabia by Iran, as Iran is making it, is attacking a number of countries. It's Iran now has a running total of let's see, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Iraq. I think that's and obviously Israel. I think that's all the countries. So I'm not aware that it's actually attacked Egypt. Bearing in mind, Egypt has a very large military. Turkey has a very large military. Saudi Arabia have a very large military. None of these countries have got small militaries. I'm not aware that any are retaliating against Iran. And of course, sorry, number 9, Britain's been attacked because our Akrotiri air base was attacked, and thankfully for the British, the Greeks have stepped in to protect us, and it's kind of like the reverse of 80 something years ago, isn't it, when the British stepped in to protect the Greeks when the when the Nazis invaded Greece, or subsequent to the Italians attacking Greece, that the Germans joined into that battle and the Brits went in to protect Greece, or tried to, and obviously got beaten back and ultimately retreated. But this time round, it's the Greeks protecting us, or protecting our airbase. So kind of a strange world we live in, really, where we didn't have the means to defend our own air base, despite there being well, anyway, it's not. This isn't to talk about that particularly. I'd also call out a couple of others that have just reduced in price by a great deal. I mean, Alting Gold at £13.60 is, well, you can see it's still at a 40% gain, but considering gold is what's gold at today, this weekend, gold is at $5,160. Um, that is an incredibly good price, relatively. Uh, Easter hasn't really moved either way. I called time this week on Thungela, and in its replacement, I have bought or added South Africa ETF, which is a new idea, and this is again a play on gold and PGMs. Um, 28% gold, 13% PGMs, and then probably about 45% financials. And there's some very exciting. I'll be talking more about that ETF in a future article. Geiger counters also down now, considering that, of course, energy prices have been increasing. Interesting to see that uranium hasn't shared in uh, that. Uranium is now at 85 a pound, $85 per pound. Wasn't long ago, it was at 90 plus spot price. So interesting to see that. I don't think many people would have assumed that uranium should go down in price when the value of energy is going up in price. To me, that seems counterintuitive. But also Silver Corp, another beneficiary, that has dropped by about 15% down to 16. That's Canadian dollars, and silver is still at 84, and has shown a lot of resilience around the 80 plus mark. So are we going to see 100 and are we going to see silly prices of silver? Maybe not. But is there a strong level of support at 80 plus? Yes, there is. So we'll see on that one. But again, I think that one, even though it's up 127%, it seems bizarre to be saying these things are good value, but that's kind of how I'm seeing them. Bailey Gifford China Trust. China came out this week saying that their internet stocks were enjoying quite a rebound, actually, and that hasn't really moved in the last week or so on the news. So that's interesting to see. GMS, Gulf Marine. Personally, I did sell off quite a bit of GMS. I kept a token amount. Obviously, didn't make any announcements on my Substack of it particularly, but I did sort of reduce down my holding back on Monday, just as I sort of thought, well, it feels to me like it's a matter of time until somebody evacuates the ships, and I think it was about 2 days later that they announced that they'd evacuated a number of the ships. It's only, I think, four of the 14 that they've had to do that on, but nevertheless, majority are in the Persian Gulf, and I haven't bought back in yet. Obviously, that as far as this goes, it's still up 27%, but I haven't bought back in yet. But at some point, I shall. I think that the investment thesis is still very much sound. MPAC's got caught up in, so that's dropped from about £3.50 to 3.05. Again, quite an interesting. I wrote an article on that quite recently, and I mean, yes, their results to December weren't like, oh yeah, everything's doubled. It was kind of solid and pretty static to the prior period in terms of results, but um, the order flow is the positive bit I took from it, and also the increase to profit. Its operating profit had increased by about 50% half year to half year. So I'm expecting to see more. So that again, I think is an opportunity. Jubilee, now copper is still just under 13,000 a ton. I had no expectation. I mean, when I wrote my original, you can go back to the Jelp, I need some. I had no expectation of copper being anywhere close to 13,000 a ton. So the news as well that it's moved ahead with drilling out on its copper open pit copper mine that it's working with Galileo on. I, I think again it's all very positive, and Sabre. Oops, sorry, Sabre's down as well, just a little bit. And again, like people are not going to stop insuring their cars because there's the Iran conflict. So to me, that feels like you could pick up something cheaper at on an opportunity. Amova is down a little bit. Again, that's over in Japan. It hasn't moved by a great deal. It's still up 15%. Um, I still remain very positive about Japan, and I think Japan's one of the safe havens that's been a beneficiary of the last week. Another beneficiary of the last week is, of course, Ithaca, considering that the experts said that it was going to sort of, not going to go any higher than £1.80, and here we are at £2.50. And really, it hasn't got going yet. I mean, if the government relent on the 78% tax rate on the what do they call it, the extra petroleum tax. I think EPT, is it? There's an acronym for it anyway. That and really, if we are going to be in a situation where we need to, all hands to the pump, so to speak, well, you're not going to get all hands to the pump when taxes are at eye-watering levels that discourage people from putting their hands on a pump. So I think that the government will probably blink on their uh, uh, tax levels, and they say that they are in discussions. I think if that happens, then Ithaca's so we'll see. But yeah, I mean, even at 248, potentially still represents excellent value. I mean, will we see gold? Sorry, start again. Will we see oil hit above $100 this coming week? Almost certainly. It feels like that's going to happen. So yeah, that's been a huge beneficiary to the past week. Bluefields hasn't really moved anywhere, but again, isn't energy now on more of a premium than it was before? Um, I would argue it is. I'm going to skip Unite. Alpha Min is down by a vast amount. A vast amount. Now, tin is still at 50,000 a ton. Again, I didn't anticipate when I wrote my Alpha Min article. I sort of said, well, tin could get into the 40,000s maybe. It's at 50,000. So again, it's feels like a great opportunity at that price is how I'm seeing it. But obviously none of this is advice. You make your own investment decisions. Another beneficiary is ENI. Um, ENI I particularly like because of the level of sustainable aviation fuel. It's pretty much the biggest aviation fuel producer in Europe. It's expanding that operation dramatically, and aviation fuel is at a great premium. Now, obviously, the sustainable aviation fuel is more expensive. So I'm not saying this is going to be a ticket to massive expansion, but it certainly will not hurt. It will not hurt ENI. ENI will be a beneficiary to this, and also of its capabilities around refining, its capabilities around LNG in places like Mozambique and over in the western side of Africa. I think it's forget the exact country. That they're operating from, but they're not caught up at all, pretty much not at all, to my knowledge, in the Middle East. So are a huge beneficiary. As you can see there, they're up 30%. So again, I think one to take a much closer look at, and that's again, could head a lot higher. Now, similarly, and this is kind of one that you perhaps would not expect to, because, oh yeah, Turkey's next to Iran, so therefore let's sell it off. And it has been sold off, actually. Personally, I've been buying more, and the reason I've been buying more, and I'll sort of take you back to my article on this, because I don't think people have really, I mean, yes, there are some companies within the top 10 of the Turkey ETF that are going to be harmed by the war. And what I'm thinking of particularly here is the so Aselsan will be a huge beneficiary of the current conflict. So Aselsan basically make drones, they make military equipment, they make missiles, they make sort of defensive. So you can sort of see there the mounted howitzer fire control system. Turkey has been attacked by Iran, so we'll see what happens there. Um, so BIM, obviously, this is a defensive stock, it's a food stock, so that shouldn't be affected negatively, should be affected positively. Akbank, again, it's a bank forecast PE of 2.8 times. So yeah, that's not priced for any kind of anything other. But this is the one I wanted to get to. Turkey Petrol Raffinerie. Try pronouncing that. Um, yeah, look, I mean, it's not really sort of something that you'd sort of naturally associate with Turkey, but Turkey is a huge refiner of jet fuel and of diesel. And these are the things that particularly have been hit in the Middle East. And of course, Turkey is not in the Middle East. Yes, it is next door to Iran. Am I bothered that it's going to get caught up in the conflict? Not particularly. I mean, it's a fellow Muslim country. Quite why the Iranians have launched attacks on Turkey is beyond. I mean, I think what they're doing is trying to disrupt oil. So they've, I think, had a go at hitting the pipeline that runs through Turkey, which runs from the Caspian. So I think that's what's going on, and that's what's gone on. So I don't think they've particularly attacked Turkey, but yeah, Turkey is potentially a huge beneficiary to the rising price of oil and LPG and diesel. So not one that you'd kind of expect to see, but and also a large sustainable aviation fuel. So becoming the lead SAF supplier in Turkey. Um, Start supplying SAF to the market by 2026 via co-processing. So again, one to think about. This perhaps will be affected, uh, but perhaps less so than the guys over in the Middle East. So Emirates and was it Qatar Airways and Etihad, they're all grounded. Turkish Airlines, obviously headquartered out of Istanbul. Again, it will be affected on some routes, but it'll also be flying around. So actually, Turkish Airlines could be a beneficiary to what's going on, rather than being negatively affected by what's going on. And you can sort of see there, I mean, a large part of their business is basically pan-Atlantic, so connecting via Spain. So they've got this partnership, or they part own this trying to think what it's called. Is it Blue something Airlines? Oh, sorry, Air Europa. That's what it's called. So there's also yeah, like automotive and other things as well in this. So yeah, I just think that dropping in price, to my mind, is an opportunity. Regional REITs, is that going to, our office is going to be negatively affected? Not substantially. I mean, again, it's now dropped below the £1 price point. Um, which, yeah, could be an opportunity. Obviously, Hunting delivered some pretty solid results. Um, Intuitive Investments I've written about this morning. I'm probably not going to sort of spend a lot of time talking about this one, but but there were some questions raised about the credibility of IIG during my interview last Monday. And I thought, it's worth me setting out why I believe it is a credible investment. And yes, I mean, there are risks, and you make your own investment decisions, but um, when you've got two FTSE 100 companies involved in it, the Chinese state, the massive macro, which is China wants to be the best sports, wants to be the Olympic winner, the one that wins the most gold medals. When you've got sort of a monopoly position uh, and 1.3 billion customers, I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up really. So even if it only achieves a small fraction of what I think it's capable of achieving, that's why I'm excited about it, because it's yeah, I mean, but yes, there are risks. I mean, of course there are risks. Ivanhoe, I wanted to particularly point out, as I say, copper is still just below 13,000. um, the medium term outlook for copper, the grade, the commentary is that generally there are declining grades of copper worldwide. um, so the world needs to discover more copper, and needs to develop more copper. Developing a copper mine can take years and years and years, over a decade. So anything that can shortcut that process is going to be valuable. And Ivanhoe have got a technology that allows an operator to detect amount of drilling and proving out of a resource. Essentially, they bit like sort of having a heat-seeking missile, when before you had sort of bullets, that your chances of hitting a target have just increased by quite a bit, because it's not a question of pointing the gun in exactly the right direction. It's a question of pointing it in the right general direction and then sort of honing in on the thing itself. So, and then finally, South Africa ETF, as I say, strong presence with PGMs, strong presence with gold. In fact, there was an article I did want to share, which is the latest World Platinum report, which basically spoke about the World Platinum Investment Council, which is this, which yeah, the quarterly results, which basically confirms that platinum is still massively in deficit, that supply and demand hasn't, there we go. So deficits to narrow compared to, but deficits have not disappeared. That the price rise, yes, it's provided a supply response. It's interesting because this is something where I spoke to a yeah, so the deficit is going to be 4% rather than 8%, bearing in mind that there's going to be some level of supply destruction in all of that. I still think that actually looks, and as you can see there, you've got as well an ongoing deficit going forwards in time for platinum, and of course palladium looks to be moving into surplus. That affects the Russians more than it affects the South Africans. Um, the type of PGM that comes out of South Africa is typically platinum rich and rhodium rich, and of course this, I don't think, goes into rhodium specifically, but if we were to look at um, rhodium, if you'd bought rhodium about a year ago, you would have bought it at about 5,000. Whereas today, rhodium's at 12,000. So you can see there it's 106% up over the period, which compared to palladium's 75% up, and platinum is 122% up. So it's not up quite as much as platinum, but rhodium is one of these metals that well, you can see there it's dropped back by a bit. So it was at 12.2, is now 11.6. Yeah, if you go back in time, I mean, rhodium, you can see it here. Rhodium spiked to 30,000 back in 2021. So could we see a similar position in 2026? I remain of the view that fundamentally it's in deficit, and the companies um, that are producing platinum are facing challenges, declining grades and things like this. So yeah, to me it's not a cut and dried not a cut and dried. So that sort of brings me to the final one, which is Unite. I think what I'll do, we're at 25 minutes. I think I'll just separate out these videos and cover Unite in a separate video. So if you rejoin that, if you're interested in knowing about Unite, and why I believe I've looked at the 2025 results and why I believe that's a great opportunity. Come back and watch that. Look forward to explaining that to you shortly. All right, cheerio for now. Cheerio.